Welcome to Taiwan Report News Brief, news and analysis from Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith. Up today on the program, the New York Times and others have applied to set up bureaus in Taiwan. Chinese hacking efforts are getting more sophisticated and interesting. Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece says something very interesting that may point to economic turbulence ahead. The TPP makes a pan-green move as the DPP retreats, and what it says about the TPP. And finally, I got something wrong on yesterday's show, but what I learned makes Han Kuo-yu's call for his supporters to skip the recall vote that much more mysterious. But as always, coronavirus updates. Kick off the show. All right, Taiwan confirmed no new cases of the COVID-19 coronavirus for the 10th consecutive day on Sunday. It was also the 35th straight day with no domestically transmitted infections. Now, if we reach 14 consecutive days with no cases, collectively we'll have reached the standard time length for quarantine. Now, there are some proposals for easing various things being discussed, articles of which I've linked to on report.tw. Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced on Friday 7 more foreign news outlets have applied to open bureaus in Taiwan this year, including the New York Times. Including the new applications, 59 foreign news outlets are stationed in Taiwan from 16 nations. Now, with China expelling journalists in response to U.S. moves against their state-owned mouthpieces and Hong Kong's freedoms rapidly eroding Taiwan is looking better and better. This is good news for Taiwan and should result in more and hopefully better coverage. Now, events like the Sunflower Movement were criminally underreported in the world press. An article in ZDNet, which I've linked to on report.tw, reported something rather alarming but kind of interesting in how it works. So, hackers believed to be operating in the interests of the Chinese government have targeted the air-gapped networks of the Taiwanese and the Philippine military. Trend Micro says the attacks have been carried out by a group known as Tropic Trooper, also known as Keyboy. Attacks involve the use of USB Fairy, a malware strain that contains a feature allowing it to self-replicate to removable USB devices, such as thumb drives and portable storage systems. Trend Micro says the point of these attacks was to allow hackers to reach inside air-gapped, which are isolated internet disconnected networks operated by the Taiwanese and the Philippine militaries and other targets. The malware would infect a system with fewer security protections and then wait for a USB to be connected, infect the device, and wait to be ferried to other parts of a victim's internal network. On the new device, USB Fairy would collect sensitive documents inside the USB device's internal storage and wait until it was ferried back to another internet-connected device where it would send the data back to Tropic Trooper's command and control servers. Now, I reached out to a professional analyst about how worrying this is, and his response was, if the military sticks to proper security protocols, then it's not that worrying, ... in all caps, if. That is a big if. Meanwhile, in similar news, Taiwan's Criminal Investigation Bureau is investigating an alleged cyber attack on the presidential office after some members of the country's media on Friday received what the office said were altered documents pertaining to 2 April meetings between President Tsai Ing-wen and Premier Su Tseng. The spokesperson's office of the presidential office said Friday night that the documents, which claimed to reveal a Tsai Ing-wen plot, had been forged and altered and asked the media not to publish quotes from them. Now, the Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece, Global Times, in a piece entitled rather hilariously, "Mired in Uproar and Panic, Taiwan's DPP a clown in their self-directed political soap opera, experts." I noticed something interesting in this paragraph. Young noted that pro-secessionist moves would never succeed. Taiwan will face a massive economic blow when ECFA stops without extension this year. Chinese People's Liberation Army's recent drills have already sparked discussion of taking over Dongsha Islands, which is controlled by Taiwan in the South Pacific, South China Sea. Since Tsai Ing-wen took over the reins of the island, 7 countries have cut off diplomatic ties with Taiwan. The person quoted Yang Lixin as a research fellow at the Beijing-based Research Center of Cross-Straits Relations. Now, I should note Yang is not an official government spokesperson, but being in the Beijing-based Research Center of Cross-Straits Relations, it's not unreasonable to guess that Yang is likely in touch with policymakers or moves in the same circles. Plus, this was run in a state-run outlet. Aside from the typical bluster about losing diplomatic partners and the threats of war and invasion, which has become rather more common recently, something else really jumped out. Young said, quote, when ECFA stops without extension this year. When ECFA stops, not if ECFA stops. Now, ECFA is a trade agreement with China that went into effect during the Ma administration, and it does indeed expire this year. Now, it could be easily renewed, but apparently, according to this guy, it's not going to be. Now, this could come as a blow to some businesses, possibly including local farmers exporting to China. On the other hand, this may further the Taiwan government's efforts to disentangle economically from China. Regular listeners to the show will know I've been following the proposal put forward by a DPP lawmaker to remove unification front with China as a national goal from the act governing relations between the people of the Taiwan area and the mainland area. That's so pithy. The reason is because this is why I'm watching, is because I want to see how the various parties react, and it's very revealing. Now, the proposal passed a first reading and it went to committee. Then the lawmaker just pulled it, clearly on the orders of higher ups in the DPP. He said with Tsai Ing-wen's inauguration approaching, he did not want the proposals to be a source of contention for China and opposition parties, which would give Beijing a pretext for saber-rattling and undermining peace. Now, the PRC response was what you'd expect, hostility. The KMT response was interesting, saying they wouldn't block it, but questioning the timing and citing the need for more discussions on the issue. Now, we have 2 other responses that I've been waiting for that, again, are also revealing. The first is unsurprising. The Taiwan State Building Party, via their legislator, their only legislator, Chen Bo-wei, a.k.a. 3Q, they're putting forward a plan. And essentially, it's similar to what the DPP lawmaker proposed. Now, what is interesting is about what he had to say about it. And this is from the Taipei Times. Quote, no one should apologize for their self-entity, Chen wrote, quoting the president. Ouch. However, the People's Republic of China refuses to acknowledge that it is part of the Republic of China, which is the premise of the existing act, Chen wrote. Therefore, we would acknowledge that the PRC is a sovereign nation to spare our neighbor from being oppressed by this nation's laws, he wrote, adding that real love sometimes means setting each other free. I thought that was pretty clever. The other response is very interesting indeed. The Taiwan People's Party caucus came out strongly in support of the change, even likening the existing law as treason. Now, I found this in a local media report in Mandarin, so I haven't seen any English on this yet. This puts the TPP more into the green end of the spectrum than the DPP, at least on this issue. This is fascinating, as the general perspective on the party up to now has been that they're kind of light blue. It is also interesting because slowly we're beginning to start to see some outlines of a distinct political agenda with actual policy stances on controversial issues. That's very important. Because now, another interesting point is that the party chairman and current Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je recently seems to have taken a step back, allowing the TPP caucus to be the face of the party. The caucus also traveled to Jiayi to help campaign for a by-election candidate. The TPP still has a long way to go before it's a coherent political party, though, or a political entity at all. They're way behind the 2 big parties on all levels in terms of infrastructure, people, connections, experience, brand image, policy platform, pretty much you name it. They did, however, pull ahead of the KMT in public support in a Pan Green Outfits poll recently. The poll may not be entirely accurate, but the TPP could be on the way to becoming a viable political party. The party's most recent actions are encouraging on that front, but they've still got a long way to go yet. All right, I must apologize. I got something wrong on the show yesterday. I also need to thank Kat Thomas for pointing it out to me. On the vote to recall Kaohsiung Mayor Han Kuo-yu to take place on June 6th, I was right that there needs to be a 25% voter turnout for it to be valid, and that a majority must vote for the recall if for it to be effective. That's true, and that is what is usually reported in the papers. So I pretty much just repeated that. But there is something else I didn't know. The total number of yes voters needs to exceed 25% of the electorate. Well, okay, that totally trashed my lower overall turnout theory for why Han has called for his supporters to not show up to vote in the recall. But of course, that begs the question, why did he do it then? All right, so We Care Kaohsiung founder Aaron Yin, and he's also the co-organizer of the recall campaign, said that the message was a trick and that if Han is recalled, he would say that is because his supporters did not vote. Maybe, but since the polls have been consistently showing he's going to lose anyway, that seems like a weak explanation. And if some of Han's supporters do take up his call to not vote, it will only make the voter margin voting yes even more overwhelming and embarrassing. Doing the math on the polls, which you can conveniently see on the blog Frozen Garlic, shows that by turnout, the yes voters would be in the mid-30s, well above the 25% threshold. In other words, Han is probably toast. So, trying to figure out what Han was up to, I watched the video where he made his announcement, which is called Han Kuo-yu Speaks from the Heart. Now, the video is professionally done, suggesting this was planned at least over a couple of days, if not longer. So this is no off-the-cuff Han gaffe. In the video, Han, overlaid with sappy mood music, does appear to be speaking from the heart. He addresses the recall vote directly, but says this is all he's going to say about it. He said he respected the democratic process, which is odd considering he's launched multiple legal challenges to it, and there's one ongoing. He talked about how he'd worked hard, had a clean government, and all that sort of thing. But mostly, and I think this is the key, he was speaking to his supporters. This video was for them. He talked about how many people showed him their concerns over the recall vote, and in the video, he's reaching out to them, showing them he cares about them in return. In his segment asking them not to vote, he couched it in terms that appeared to make it seem his call was more about his concern for them than his concern for himself. He said that everyone, while observing disease prevention measures, should go out for a stroll, spend money, and as much as possible, not allow their lives and their businesses to be affected by politics. Fundamentally, this is an emotional appeal to his supporters to prepare them for the ultimate result. By keeping them away from the polls, that reduces the risk of violence or trouble, but it also reduces the heartbreak and disappointment many of his devoted fans would no doubt feel otherwise. And that is what I think the real message he was delivering to his loyal supporters. Live your life, don't let this bring you down. Now, this may not have been a political ploy to help win the recall at all. This may well be his way of letting his fans down gently and keep their loyalty going forward. And as always, check out report.tw for articles on these topics and more. Hit subscribe and hit like, and tune in tomorrow.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
哎呦，就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。